Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum is over. Art is pain, life is suffering.
Jonathan, what have you done?
To dream the impossible dream.
There's no escape for you. The high table wants your life.
To right the unrightable wrong.
Tell me what you want.
Passage.
I can't help you.
To reach the unreachable star.
Do you expect him to make it out? A $14 million bounty on his head. And everyone in the city wants a piece of it. I say the odds are about even. Doc, 5 seconds.
John Wick, excommunicado in effect in 3,
2,
1.
And away we go.
All right, Andy, it's John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum.
The extended title.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that. I think they found the Latin quote and liked it.
They liked it so much they titled it and say it in the movie.
It is one of my bits of frustration in the movie, and no typographical alteration doesn't change that. The fact that the original quote is Parabellum, not Parabellum, does not account for the fact that they used the title in the script, and I hate it. That's dumb. I wonder if that's why I gave this a 4-star review when I first saw the movie instead of 5.
Well, here's what's interesting, Pete, and maybe this will change your mind. I don't know. Parabellum, as you said, is si vis pacem parabellum, the Latin quote, if you want peace, prepare for war. But since then, 1902, they named a cartridge designed by Luger for the Luger pistol. It was a 9x19 millimeter cartridge called the Parabellum. And it's all one word.
That doesn't help.
It does, because this is a film in which a lot of gunplay is used. And so the fact that they combined it here, I think, is actually quite clever, because it references the weapon as much as the Latin quote.
Okay. But they say the Latin quote in the movie.
Yeah, I don't really care about that. They don't say John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. And that's usually your frustration.
That is usually my frustration. That is usually it. They don't say anything about chapters, although there is a significant sequence in a library. So that's something.
There is no reference to any of the bands named Parabellum. There is a Colombian band, a French band, a Russian group that performed at the Eurovision Song Contest, a Japanese rock band. There's an Argentine song, and there's another song by Hate Eternal, also Parabellum. It is popular in naming songs and naming bands, apparently.
Well, it's a cool word. It's a fine word. I'm all in on the word as it exists. It's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, to the point, I suppose, is, though, this is the only film, at least up to this point. Again, John Wick Chapter 4 has not opened in theaters at the time of our recording, and I don't think it's going to have a subtitle. It has not had any in any of the marketing. I guess we'll just wait and see if they surprise us when the movie actually opens. But at this point, Chapter 3 is the only one where they decide, instead of just saying Chapter 3, we're also going to throw in this word. And that's, I suppose, why it ends up feeling a little wonky.
Yeah. Well, this is a movie that further expands the universe of John Wick. We have just so many assassins, still a lot of assassins. And apparently they're all fanboys of John Wick, which is also great. He has done a great job of building a community of assassins that all eagerly anticipate both his friendship and killing him. And so that's pretty much the universe of John Wick, Parabellum.
Well, when this movie came out, it was rated R for pervasive, strong violence and some language.
Okay, the first thing, just to get it out of the way, I am a big fan of Lance Reddick, and Lance Reddick passed away this last week as we record this since our last recording. And he obviously plays the role of Charon in this, in the Charon, in the Continental, and it is really, really sad. I'm a big fan of Lance. I know we were talking briefly a bit ago, and you don't have quite the Reddick catalog under your belt, but I feel like between The Wire and Fringe alone, Lance Reddick and I became very best friends, and it's sad to see him go. He went at 60, and that's too early.
Yeah,
we're
really
too
young.
close to
Really,
60
really
for that to feel comfortable.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely enjoy seeing him when I do see him in whatever. It's been much less than you, primarily just these John Wick films. I did watch some of The Wire. I've never finished it. He was also in Oz, right? Wasn't that something else where he was big in?
Maybe, Oz was not one that I ever picked up on. I didn't have
thought
HBO
you did
at
for
the
some
time.
reason.
I did some of it. I did like probably the first season, but I never, it's the same thing with Orange is the New Black. Like I watched some of that and didn't watch the rest. So I can't say I'm a huge Oz head.
Well, regardless, it is terribly tragic that we did just lose him. I mean, he was in the middle of doing promo tours for this movie John Wick Chapter 4. And so it's just tragic, at such a point that he ends up passing away. So certainly rest in peace, Reddick, and our thoughts are with your family.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about John Wick Chapter 4. When we left John Wick Chapter 3, when we left Chapter 2, I told you I hadn't seen this one as often as I'd seen the first one or even the second one, and that I looked at my Letterboxd rating and I was nervous because I had given it a 4-star instead of a 5-star. And so, how is it going to hold up? You, I believe, have even less feelings toward this movie going into it. How'd you feel watching it?
I don't know if less feelings
is that a good way to measure feelings?
No,
less of them.
Yeah, no, it's. I'd only seen this the one time. I'd only seen the second film the one time initially in theaters until watching it for the purposes of our show here. And so this was my second time returning to the third film. And I'll be honest, I quite enjoyed it. In fact, this might be shocking, but I think I enjoy it more than the first or second films, which may be backwards to how most people view these films. But I just had a really fun time with this movie.
That is amazing. Well, I also had a really fun time with this movie, but I do have some things in the movie that I found a little bit frustrating. So I'm anxious to get into it a little bit. I would like to start with bad rain effects, because that is the first thing that takes me out of the movie. Is like the opening 4 cuts are New York City in the rain, and they're so clearly a filter that it immediately I think, okay, let's go back. It's there. Let's go back and find a rainy shot that we can actually use or create one to use. I know that just became. I didn't even know I had feelings about bad rain effects until I saw these opening cuts, but. Then we get into the movie, and boy, does it pick up right where we left off.
Yeah, and just going back to your complaint about the bad rain effects, visual effects are hard, Pete. And
I know.
And it's 4 shots all within, I don't know, the first 20 seconds of the film.
Even less than that.
If that's going to take you out of the movie, then, I'm sorry, but that's just like, I guess you weren't ever in the movie. But you're not even in the movie yet. We're just starting, so.
Yeah. Well, then we get into the movie. So here's Mr. Wick.
We find him immediately after he's left the Chapter 2, and now he is on the run. He still is within his hour of time that Winston had granted him, and he is, we keep seeing cuts of eyeballs on the street, watching him, tracking him, seeing where he's going. You get a little bit of the TikTok man catching him in an alley, and then he makes his way to the doctor, which we had seen before, Randall Duck Kim. And because I take it back. First, he goes into the library because he needs to get some stuff out of a book that he's hidden away. I don't know why he has to ask the librarian. I assume he knows where that book is because he cut it into it and put stuff inside of it. So I just kind of assumed that he is very specifically tracking the location of that book as opposed to needing to ask the librarian. But regardless, he does. He goes to the book and he gets a marker, a coin, a cross on a pendant, like a rosary sort of thing. And there's a picture of his wife, and he, gives it a kiss and everything. And this is where we get our first fight, because Ernest, the giant NBA player, decides, hey, you know what? No one's going to know if I attack you early, so let's go at it. And this is our first fight in the library, and pretty much sets up what we're going to get with this film, which is a really brutal fight that just ends in just awful. It's just awful, but fully enjoyable.
It's exactly what we were talking about last week, which is every fight that we see is fuel for another story of the Baba Yaga. I saw him kill a guy in a library with a book, right? Like you could totally hear that story told later, and I think it's amazing. So I really love this. I love the setup. It's really horrifying the way they handled the neck flop and everything. It was just awful. And the fact that, once again, this also sets up the fanboying that we were talking about earlier, right? The guy already is like, yeah, I know it's a lot of money, John. I know you, John. We've hung out probably at the Continental and had drinks together, John, but I'm going to have to get that money by killing you right now, John. And I think that's really great. I think it's really great.
Yeah. And then it's like essentially a curb stomp, but with a book. And, wow. Yeah, but it's a fun fight. And I like that in the scope of the fights in this film, there definitely a lot of similar sorts of fights with just shooting and, the basic stunt work that we've seen throughout. But we're also getting some pretty gruesome kills throughout the film. And it's fun to see how they're really kind of shifting up that level of things in this film, because we have between this fight and the very next fight, we have some pretty horrific ways for people to get killed that just make me queasy to watch. But it's just, for sure. It is an awful lot of fun. I do like that we're setting this up with these people, like you said, these fans of John, who everybody seems to like him. Nobody seems to want to kill him, but they're all doing it because $14 million, that's an awful lot of money. And even when he goes to his very next person, the doctor, because he does get stabbed in the shoulder by Ernest, and so he needs to get stitched up, and it's all happening within like minutes of when the clock stops, and then the doctor is unable to finish. And the way that plays is fantastic. How the doctor stops, how John has to finish fixing himself, and then the doctor tells him where some pain pills are, and then he acknowledges, you're going to have to shoot me. Once is probably not enough. Just because he doesn't want people to think that he helped John. And the way all of that plays, the way John so quickly just shoots him to get it over with, like all of that is just like, this film sets things up in such a perfect way. I have a great time with the start of this film.
I want to step back just a little bit, because I think this was the library fight before or after we meet Mantzoukas in the alley. I think he's running in the alley is the first shot. He says, "Tick-tock, John Wick."
Yeah, right.
Mr. Wick, yeah. Okay. I want to bring up Mantzoukas only now just so that we actually can call back later at the end of the film. So, Tick-tock, Mr. Wick, he works for the Bowery King, and he has a really nice watch, and he's sitting in some trash.
A typical type of person that the Bowery King represents.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So, I guess the fights, this movie, now that he's excommunicado, it's some of the things that we saw in the last movie is he's running away and everybody's, looking at their watch, and here we open and the clock is ticking down to the 6 p.m. It feels like we're moving into some seriously, like, this movie celebrates the arbitrariness of fights because everybody's after him. And as we've discovered, everybody in the John Wick universe is an assassin, that there is a little bit of suspension of disbelief that we're just going to be fighting and shooting a ton. And that's okay. Like that's part of it. And I had to get myself out of my head a little bit, because it felt like so many of the fights they're so good and they're such a celebration of incredible stunt work. And I think Keanu is doing an incredible job of playing injured and exhausted over the course now of consecutive 3 movies. And yet it's just a sort of concussive repetition of fights that start to feel early on a little bit disconnected. And so I love it. I think I'm able to disconnect that, but I did notice that that this feels a little bit arbitrary compared to the first 2 movies.
Yeah, I can get your point in the sense that it's just, assassins trying to kill him one after the other, as opposed to Common going after him because he killed his ward. Or,
yes. Yeah.
Or Ares going after him because she's protecting Santino. Things like that, where there's a specific reason why the fight is happening. Whereas here, it's just like, this is essentially what we're watching is the montage that we had in the last film of just a bunch of random people deciding to get John. Here, the difference is we get to watch all of those fights.
It's not in a montage.
It's just like fight, then fight, then fight, then fight. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fine, but it's a thing I notice that this is like, I have to get over the fact that this is a celebration of stunts and not the most complex nor necessarily interesting story. And when we do get into story, it's a little bit, I don't know, it hits me sideways. Like as soon as he gets to the point where he actually is going through the ropes of removing the excommunicado from his head, he wanders through the desert and meets a guy who makes him cut off his finger. And then after doing all of that sacrifice, he comes back and ends up not making good on it, not making use of the fact that he's, in fact, free of being excommunicado by choosing not to kill Winston. And so all of those things sort of contradict one another in a way that at least makes me think, John, come on, now I'm questioning a little bit of what you're doing again.
Well, but this, I think, goes to, when I was cheekily complaining about the first film about the fact that they killed his puppy. And it's just like, he had the puppy for less than 24 hours. Come on. He's going to go through all this just because of this puppy. But as he says in this film, it wasn't just the fact that it was a puppy. There was so much more to it. And I think that's what's going on here when he gets that assignment from the elder. And the assignment is you have to kill Winston to right your wrongs so that you will be back. And because it's not just killing Winston, it is you have to kill Winston and then you will be working for the high table. You will be one of our men. And that's going to be your life, the rest of your life. And it's the conversation that he has with Winston when he goes back to talk to him at the Continental and to actually follow through when Winston says, you have to look at this, John. Is this who you want to be? Because I didn't think that was who you wanted to be. And that, I think, is the point of that entire thing is John, he's willing to go through all of this so that he can stay alive and keep the memory of his wife alive and everything. But that is the reminder that he needed, that there was a reason that he stepped out of this business. And if he goes back into it just for all of this, then it's the wrong reasons. And it's not gonna, he would never end up being satisfied with the reasons that he ended up alive by that point. And so for me, I found that to work quite well. And then the fact that Winston turns around and kills him, or shoots at him at least, I think that speaks very specifically to Winston and his role in this world, because I don't think that he has the same feelings that John does. So I found that logic very strong.
I think it's not that I don't see the logic. It's that it happens so fast. I feel like it's unearned. Like I feel like those twists are unearned because of the passage of time and pacing. For me, that doesn't hit me as solidly as it sounds like it does to you. But I want to hold that question until the end when we talk about the Winston's turn, because I think it'll be important. Before we get there, we do have, I think before our main antagonist shows up, we do have the horse chase. I want to get your take on the horse chase, which I thought was exceptionally cool, but it feels like in reading up on some others, reviews of this movie, it's the horse sequence that is easy to lampoon in Chapter 3. Did you share those particular feelings?
No, and I guess, speaking to a lot of the fights, I thought that was fine. I thought that was a fun addition, and that's something I definitely appreciated. And, per your point about the fights, not necessarily feeling like there was any specificity as to why, other than the fact that it's just different assassins trying to kill John, I really liked that they were doing a lot with each of them through this whole opening, pretty much up until he kind of goes to Morocco. I enjoyed that they were giving us so many different feels for each of them. And so, we go from the library fight to the fight in the antique shop. And, he goes through all that work to get that gun put together just so he can use one bullet. And then it's this crazy knife fight of these people as they're throwing knives at each other. And it's like horrifying and awesome in the way that plays out. And the kills in that are, there are just two of them that just are so disgusting. They just make my skin crawl. And then we go into the stables, and then John has this magic power with horses where he gets them to kick at just the right time, which really made me laugh. And then he goes on the ride, and then there's the motorbike chase. Like there's so many different levels of each of these the fight scenes that I didn't have any problems with it because they were doing things differently. And in the scope of what we're getting out of the world of John Wick, I found, you know what, they're giving us something new each time, and we're finding different ways to make it exciting. So I had a great time.
We meet Angelica Houston as the director in the theater, and this is where things start to, at least it feels for pacing, this is a chance for breathing. And it all happens when, the assassins, they're doing they're dancing, and then the assassins, John Wick shows up to her first to say, hey, I need a ticket. And so she says, okay, I'll punch your ticket. And they brand him with an upside down cross on his back, which is, again, fantastic bit of like assassinry mysticism that I really like, and tradition. I think it's super cool. And so his whole thing is like, get me out of this country, send me to Casablanca. In Retribution, the adjudicator, I think, shows up and gets a sushi chef who's also an assassin, Natch. And he goes, and we have the great sequence where they're all dancing with the director, and the assassins walk through the spotlights in what I have to say is one of the coolest, most dramatic entrances in the movie. I love it so much. I want it to be my desktop wallpaper of my soul.
It's a great moment, for sure. I like that the director is involved. And this is another thing. And, we should just, to the point of the director, certainly this whole idea of the theater that she trains these Russians in will become a key part of the TV show Ballerina that they are developing. So that's definitely an element of this world. And it honestly felt very much like Marvel's The Red Room as far as, training these Russian spies.
Yeah.
And that kind of made me laugh. But to your point, Angelica Houston, she's always great. I love seeing her. I mean, I don't think we've really talked about her probably since Prizzi's on her. It's been a very long time since we've talked about something that she's been on.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
But she's great here as the director, as the woman who basically had taken John in. We learned that he is from Belarus, and we get Jordani, get a sense of his backstory a little more. And yeah, this whole idea of this ticket, I don't know. I think the rules of this world are intriguing to me, and I don't know how. I think that there is some interesting complexities, and maybe there are gray areas even within the world, but clearly there is this ticket that John has that she feels she has to honor, and he uses it to get to Casablanca, and in return she says, you can never come back. And that was essentially the deal that they had, as far as he had his ticket, he punched it, or she punched it for him, and then he left, and she granted him his wish. But at the same time, it's not completely okay by the high table, even though it seems like it is something that is part of the world where, well, if you have this, you have to honor it. It's almost like the little blood oaths that they have, that you have to honor this. But then it's like, would Sophia be considered working against the high table because she honored her blood oath? Like, I there are levels of oaths that people swear, and it does make you wonder, like, what the hierarchy of the oaths is.
Yeah, I did too. I feel like every promise is a promise that could lead to your death in this universe, like whether it's a blood oath or a ticket or a whatever. Like, I almost think that it's safer to assume there is no hierarchy. They're all equal, and the repercussions are all terrible if you don't do a thing. Right.
Well, it's like in the last film, like we had in John Wick Chapter 2, he had a blood oath that he owed to Santino, and he has to follow through. And so Santino has him kill his sister, Gianna. And in the process of doing that, he follows through on the blood oath. He kills Gianna. And then Santino says, I have to, you killed my sister. I now have to avenge her. So my people are going to kill you now. And so it's like that thinking that's like these levels of oaths that like you follow through on this blood oath, which I wanted you to do. But now that you did, because she was my sister, I have to avenge her. And so now I have to kill you. It's like, it's like, this is just a world where you'll never end up on top. Like you're always taking yourself deeper every time you follow through on something.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
Because Angelica Houston sure has to pay her price for helping John.
Oh, yeah. Like, and that was another thing in this movie that I think was new from the last movie is this pledge of fealty that they keep doing over and over and over again. Like they have to take it out loud. And for her, it was present your hands in fealty. What are the exact words? I have served. I will continue to serve, something like that. Like, I'm of service. I will continue to be of service, something like that. And she has to hold her hands out together, palms together in front of her, and they stab through both hands with a katana. And that's legit painful. It's just so bad to imagine what is going on with her. Can we talk just a little bit about the adjudicator?
Ah, yes.
Are you familiar with the fantastic Asia Kate Dillon?
No.
Man. So I think it was before this. I'm trying to figure out. So a little bit of Orange is the New Black. So Asia Kate Dillon played Brandy Epps in Orange is the New Black, but also Billions. That's where I first discovered Asia Kate Dillon because they played it was the first time I'd seen an openly non-binary actor playing a non-binary character that was written super solidly. Like, and I think there was probably a little bit of spectrum disorder in or neurodiversity spectrum written into the character. Incredibly cool character on the show Billions. I loved it. And, then seeing them in this particular movie, I think they have such a great and diabolical, conjuring a real sinister look on their face that I think makes for a great character. I like the idea that there's this representative of the high table who speaks with great authority on the, all issues of the high table as if the high table is one organism. That's a cool bit of world building, that the adjudicator exists here to make decisions without having to call in any requests for instruction as the high table. The adjudicator is the high table, and for our purposes, that's really all we need to know. Right? I mean, is that kind of what you get out of this performance?
Okay, this is one question that I had. Yeah, I think their performance fits the part well. I don't think there's a lot to it. I think we pretty much get like the angry, bad cop sort of character out of the adjudicator. But I do find them really interesting, and I think Asia Kate Dillon plays this character perfectly because it does exactly what the character needs to do. I don't think there's a ton to it, but I do enjoy the way that it plays out. But my question is this, and this may be something that we just don't, that I don't know I don't know how it's going to end up feeling. I guess it's probably not a big thing that they're worried about by this point in the franchise, but my recollection, and I didn't go check, but my recollection in the end of chapter 2, the $14 million bounty that, originally Santino had placed $7 million bounty on John Wick. He gets killed. My recollection is that I believe it was the Camorra, the Italian mafia, they double it and put the $14 million on John. Not the high table. I believe very specifically in the film, they say the Camorra doubles the contract on John, and then he gets excommunicado and all that. And so the Camorra was headed by Gianna and then Santino after he killed off Gianna. And then he gets killed. The Camorra is this Italian crime family, and they had the seat on the high table, one of, I think, 12 seats on the high table. But now, the start of this film, it is no longer the Camorra that has the contract on John. It is the high table that has the contract on John. And so I don't know if there's a way for us to clarify this, but that was my understanding. And so I guess I was a little confused at the start of this film when suddenly it was the high table that now has the contract on John and is after him, and they have the adjudicator pursuing him and all this sort of stuff. Any thoughts on that?
I don't think it ever stopped me, this one, because I guess I assumed that by extension in chapter 2, the Kimura and the High Table are one and the same.
But they clearly aren't, because how many seats did they say? Because remember, there was like certain families had like, we have 2 seats on the table, they have 2 seats. And I know they were talking about like X number of seats. And there was that one guy who came up a couple times, Mr. Akoni, who wanted a seat on the table. And so, I don't know, I guess I just felt like that was a line of thinking that I wanted a little more clarification with.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I know that they are not, but in terms of the bounty on John, like when the family says we're calling the bounty, then that is because of their position on the High Table, that becomes the position of the High Table. That's how I put it in my head, and that's why they all were able to in this movie just agree that this is where we are. It's the High Table hates John, and they're going to go all in. And that honestly was not the problem for me in this movie in particular. Like, they want John gone. They don't like the fact that John killed somebody in the Continental, and therefore, because McShane's character let John go, he became a target as management of the Continental, and that takes us to a war in the Continental. And the fork of that story is the Continental has problems with the adjudicator and therefore the High Table, and John goes on a vision quest. And that's where things start to get muddy for me. Like, did you feel any of that?
You know, in the scope of what we're getting out of this crazy world, I understand that this is the point of contention a lot of people have with this movie. But for me, it's just like, of course, this is what's going to be next for John. It's like, why is this not going to happen? It's like, this is exactly the sort of story that we're getting here. I mean, is it odd that any of this happens? It's absolutely odd. And now we have the elder living out in the desert, and John has to wander the sands until in hopes that the elder actually comes and finds him, and of course he does, and it's Saeed Tagmudi, who we love talking about. And I don't know. In the scope of this world, it's just one more nonsense thing that I really had no issues with, because it's just like, of course there's somebody else above the High Table, because why wouldn't there be? And of course he's out in the desert, and John has to wander through the desert in hopes of finding him. All of it just seemed to be in line with this bonkers world that they've created. And so I really didn't end up having any issues, because it just, like, this whole thing is so fantastical. It's just one more thing. And so I get it. It drives some people nuts. But for me, it's just like, yeah, I'm not surprised that this is where we have to go.
I feel it. And I feel like the challenge that I have is not one about what is happening, but it's how it's paced that we get there. I feel like it's just paced in such a way that there's no time for anybody to think, give me a montage of John being back in, fingerless now, and or missing his wedding ring finger. What I guess power move by the Supreme Leader to take John's wedding ring, but off the knuckle side of his finger that's a power move, and he just puts it in his pocket. That's crazy. But the fact that John, and as I said before, that John goes through all this trouble to get back into working for the High Table, and then immediately goes against the wishes of the High Table. That's the part that I get frustrated with. And I totally get it. And your point is well taken. You're absolutely right. Why should I expect anything different from this movie that is just a freight train of action nonstop? And I feel like we kind of need to go back, because we're missing one of the central stunt sequences, which is the fight in Casablanca and Halle Berry. I mean, that was a great fight. That was a great fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is at Barada's place. He wants her dog. He agrees that he gives John the information so that he knows he needs to go wander in the desert. But then as payment, he wants her dog. And of course, she won't give it to him. So he shoots the dog. Luckily, her dog's wearing a bulletproof vest. And that sets off, the centerpiece fight. I don't know. I guess I don't know if I'd call it the centerpiece fight, but it is one hell of a fight action sequence that we get here of the two of them. This is Keanu Reeves and Halle Berry. They're taking down Barada and all of his men as they escape his compound. And it is so, I mean, it's just a wonderful, wonderful fight. Part of which is because aside from the two of them doing the yeoman's work as far as all the people they're taking down, we get her two dogs, her two Belgian Malinois, running around attacking as well. And that just like really brings things up to another level with this fight. It was so exciting. It's just such a great fight to watch.
These dogs are incredible stunt performers. I mean, they're incredibly well-trained agility dogs.
Yeah.
The stuff that they have to do and how incredible it is that she is able to, in the context of the scene, call the dogs and get the dogs to do stuff. The shot where, I mean, invariably there will be a close-up on one of the human performers and they will be somehow accosted by a villain, and the dog will like jump over a car behind them or jump off of a ledge and suddenly be there to rescue by like hanging on to genitals or arms or stomachs of a bad guy. It is extraordinarily great. But when she calls the dog and it jumps off of her back and launches up the side of that building is extraordinarily cool. That was just a great thing to do with a dog. Like these, I hope these dogs were well compensated and live in a house high in the hills because they deserve every bit of praise. It is a centerpiece of this film.
Absolutely.
I bring it up because it's interesting. It seems like, and I'm sure there is a lot of digital manipulation in the film, cleanup and all kinds of things throughout the film. But the one sequence that I thought was interesting, and listening to Chad Stahelski talk about it, is the motorcycle sequence on the Verrazano Bridge, because that is a massive composite CG stunt sequence, and it is the biggest digital sequence that they have ever done in a John Wick franchise. Who knows what we're going to get in 4? But I'm really curious how this largely CG sequence hit you.
Well, largely CG, it's really the environment around them and making them look like they're going fast. Because when you watch the behind the scenes, I mean, it's really interesting to see Keanu and all the stunt people on motorbikes that are on like a green screen stage with green screen people, like just basically moving the bikes back and forth. And then, in the movie, they actually CG the movement of the wheels, and they're just here to kind of create the movement between bikes. And then allows the actors to kind of just do their movements and everything. And it's really a fascinating watch to see how they did this. And so I don't have issues that they're doing this time. I mean, they're still doing it in really long takes, and they're allowing these scenes to play out, and they make it look like, I mean, you're seeing these actors, working between each other on these bikes as they're doing things. And so it's just not at speed. And so I don't have huge issues. I find it to be as interesting as the rest, especially because they already have so many other fight scenes that they're doing, in real, like they're really pulling off a lot of the stunts in these other things. So the fact that they do this, I just, I don't have any issues with it. It's not like they committed to making this film and only doing real stunts ever,
The movie that this is, and they talk about this being an homage to this particular movie scene, and I don't think I've seen the movie. Was it Villainous? What was the movie that they based this off of? It was a movie that they both had seen. Stahelski and Keanu had seen this movie, and they thought that motorcycle sequence is absolutely incredible. How did they do that? I don't know. Let's figure it out. So they got all the stunt performers in, and they started actually trying to recreate so many of the stunts that were done in this original film. Yeah, the Villainous. Thank you, Brian, in the chat room for the live stream. They were trying to just sort of recreate it because it was so amazing, and ended up saying, what the hell, let's do our own scene because this is just too cool to leave out. And they ended up making the sequence. I have no issue with it because, as you said, watching the behind the scenes, watching how they made this sequence is as extraordinary as a practical sequence could possibly be. I mean, it requires such an extraordinary lift, such a huge swing of ingenuity and complexity between the stunt performers and even the little green wagons that they're dragging the motorcycles around on, and to overlay that into the Verrazano Bridge footage. It is extraordinary. It is a feat, and I think it's fantastic and should be celebrated. So it does make me want to go back and watch that other movie. I haven't seen it, and so it's on the list.
It's a great movie. I honestly, weirdly, don't remember that sequence from the movie, but I do remember a lot of other sequences from that movie because they have some incredible stunt sequences throughout the film. Like the opening stunt sequence is incredible. There's a one on the staircase, kind of like going up this grand staircase. Really fantastic fight sequences throughout that film. Definitely a film worth checking out. The film I remember referencing, or them referencing with this particular film, wasn't that, although that doesn't surprise me, but it was the opening library fight because they were inspired by Bruce Lee's Game of Death when he fights Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So that's why they wanted to get another NBA player in there for that opening fight. But that was the only other thing that I know that they had done because they were wanting to kind of pay an homage to something.
I just brought up the clip of the villainous motorcycle fight, and in our efforts to talk about homage last week, I think this is exactly that. And they admit it. I'm watching this sequence and it's extraordinary. This is an extraordinary motorcycle shot scene, and I could see why they would get a bunch of guys in the room and try to recreate it because it's absolutely wonderful. Sequence. So, on the list.
In the scope of fight sequences, I just want to make sure that we talk about my favorite one, which is the final fight in the, I don't know why, like the administration center of the Continental is like this glassed in thing. Looks like it's from some future movie, but it is a super, super cool location. And I found that this final fight, I don't know if the fight itself is my favorite, but the location is fantastic. And this is where he goes up against first two of Zero's men, and these are two of our actors from the Raid films. We have Sasep Arif Rahman and Yayan Ruyan as Shinobi number 1 and 2.
Yep.
And he has this fantastic fight, John does, between or with these two in this place that's all glass. And everywhere you look, it's glass, glass, glass. And interestingly, like some are glass panels, some are like more mirrored and you can't see through them. And so there's that fantastic shot when he's talking to Zero on the other side of the glass and they walk and then suddenly Zero disappears. It's like, I don't know, it was such an interesting location and it allowed for some just beautiful movements and the way that they kind of constructed the scenes and shifted from floor to floor and space to space. I absolutely loved the look of this. It fit this world so well, and all of these kind of this neo/neon noir that they've kind of been trying to create here. I loved it. It was such an exciting location. And Zero was an interesting kind of final villain to have to fight, which in the scope of people who are, fanboys of John, Zero certainly fits the bill. So what did you think of this final location?
Well, I love it. It allows so many sleights of hand, so to speak, because of the number of times in the sequence between the two of them at the end, at least, they're able to fight, punch, kick, and then one of them disappears, right, and shows up in a reflection or on the other side of a pane of glass, and you can, and especially John in this case. So I think we see Zero do it once, and then John does it 3 or 4 times toward the end of the fight as he sort of takes control of the fight and uses that as the further perpetuation of the Baba Yaga sort of thing. Like, this is a guy who just shows up. He's mystery. He's able to vanish, and using that in the context of the fight, I thought was really smart and made for a thrilling final sequence. Particularly the anxiety that goes with watching two guys fight on glass or some sort of like clear substance, watching them throw their bodies around and then make good on the promise of that anxiety by watching the floors crack underneath them. I think that was really great, and adds to that level of threat that they're fighting, using the environment against them, using the glass against them as they keep falling through these floors. And finally, that final conversation they have after John has run Zero through with the katana, and they're sitting on their knees together. John's not on his knees, but Zero's on his knees, and he says, "John, hell of a fight." Yeah. I thought that was what a great way to end that conversation, right? To end that sequence is it's a weird sort of neo honor, right? That they get to have for having the fight. You get the feeling that Zero was honored to be killed by one such as John Wick, and that was communicated to me super clearly. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
It plays really well, and it just made for a great, final fight here. That, it also kind of ties into what you had mentioned earlier, how the Continental had been under attack by the Adjudicator and all of these people that they had sent to close this place down because they had marked it decommissioned. What was the term? Not deconsecrated. And so they come to this agreement, this temporary agreement that, because they kill all of these people, but the Adjudicator says, we'll just keep coming. You're not going to be able to stop them. And that kind of builds to this final confrontation. And that's when Winston kills John, or shoots John. John falls off the roof. And I guess that speaks to, intentions at this point. And I don't know. I kind of read this as much as there is a friendship between Winston and John, and Winston convinces John to not kill him because John wants more out of life. I don't know. I'm curious to see where things will play in John Wick Chapter 4 with their relationship. But I kind of see this as Winston acknowledging, I've never been you, John. I am one of these people. The Continental is me. I am the Continental, and I will do what it takes to keep this thing running. And so, I don't know. I read that final moment as Winston being true to who he is and acknowledging, I'm going to have to kill John Wick.
Well, and that is a question we obviously can't answer. The other side of that is that Ian McShane is pulling a Willem Dafoe, which is, and you posted in the member chat that, we have Willem Dafoe saying, oh, yeah, he was a friend. I don't think he ever intended on shooting John. I buy that. I totally buy that. But it does make me wonder if we're going to get a Dafoe sort of parallel in McShane, that he knew Wick was wearing the bulletproof fabric suit, that he was gambling with John's life, that he could maybe get them all out of this situation and get to the end. And that, the intention of the Adjudicator at the end, as they walk down the stairs and get in the car and then second guess and go back in the alley to see where John fell off the building and find that he is not there, that becomes the setup to this potential narrative, which is that possibly McShane, thought, okay, maybe I can get us all out of this if John survives, and I'm going to, do what I can. I don't know. I feel like I could go either way on it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Although it does, certainly at the end of the film, when we see that John had been rescued, and you had mentioned by the TikTok man, we see this is that moment he comes back into the story because he had picked up John's body, taken him to the Bowery King. And the Bowery King, this is the scene where we see that John is kind of alive. He's holding on just enough. And the Bowery King is pissed at the Adjudicator for everything that they came to do to him to shut him down. And John is pissed. And so both of them are pissed, and they are basically joining forces to fight against presumably the Continental and the High Table. So, and that's where we leave things. It's again, a great setup for another chapter.
Are you looking forward to John Wick Chapter 4, Andy?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I think it's interesting. They've been setting up a very interesting world here. And like I said, I know some people really didn't care for some of these elements as far as like the elder and John walking through the desert and all of this. But I don't know. This world is becoming so monumentally crazy with all of its rules and its levels that I am finding it more and more fascinating. Like, I'm curious if the Elder is going to play into Chapter 4 and we're going to get more dealing with that side of things, because now John has not only pissed off the High Table, but I'm assuming also has pissed off the Elder as far as these things that he's these rules that he's breaking, these deals he's not following through on.
Yeah. For sure. And it feels, I can't figure out is, we've talked a little bit about gas in the tank. how much gas is left in the tank for this this particular line in this franchise. There's so much good world building going on, but the thing I have to remind myself is, so far these movies pick up, the next one picks up right where the last one left off. By now, John is exhausted. Like, how much as an actor, he just keeps aging year over year over year. As a character, we're only 6-7 hours into his night, right? Like, apart from, I mean, we imagine time passes. I guess time passes on his trip to Casablanca. Like, that's compressed pretty heavily. He goes from New York, he's in Casablanca. So I guess there is.
I believe there is a point when we're I can't remember if it's the adjudicator talking to the Bowery King or to Winston, because the adjudicator gives them a week, 7 days to wrap up their affairs before they have to leave. And we see the end of that 7 days as they come in to shut them down. And then, so I think that it's been at least a week that he's been gone. And I feel like it might be even a couple weeks. So it's in that realm of time that this story takes place. Short
in terms of beating on a guy.
Well, and I mean, John Wick Chapter 4, I don't know the scope of time in which that takes, but they have already said that there is a John Wick Chapter 5 in the works. In fact, they were going to shoot 4 and 5 back to back, but I think COVID kind of shut that down, so they just opted to do just Chapter 4, and they'll do Chapter 5. I don't know. I'm assuming at some point. I just don't know when they're going to start, but I'm guessing that that's potentially as far as they're going to go.
What's just in terms of tea leaf reading, we have Keanu obviously is back. We get Donnie Yen and Hiroyuki Sanada and Rina Sawayama adding to the cast in John Wick Chapter 4. But Bill Skarsgård is in it, obviously. Lawrence Fishburne is back. We get also Clancy Brown is going to make an appearance at some point. Very excited about that. The Elder is played by George Yu. Don't know if it is the same, supposed to be the same character, The Elder. But that will be, if not, maybe there are multiple elders. I don't know. Maybe this one lives under the sea. But it looks like a fantastic cast. The trailers I've just really been excited about. And, again, as many issues as I have with this movie, boy, it does connect with my 15-year-old brain.
Yeah, well, I'm excited about talking with you about John Wick Chapter 4. It has a different writing team. Derek Kolstad is no longer involved in the writing, which makes me a little nervous. Shay Hatton, who had written or been one of the 4 credited writers on Chapter 3, is back. This time, Michael Finch is the other writer who is new to the franchise. So to that end, I am curious why the shift. What is it that led to this? And I guess we'll just have to see how John Wick Chapter 4 plays as far as how it's written. But certainly a lot to be curious with that one. So,
all right.
Well, that is it. We'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Ace, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds the stats for the awards and the numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. All right, Attitude Award season. Tell me those dogs win something.
In the world of stunts, of course, it's going to be recognized. At the Taurus World Stunt Awards, it was nominated for Best Fight. This was when John Wick and Sophia engage in the fight in the streets of Morocco. The actors and stunt performers take out guards with guns, knives, judo, hand-to-hand combat, and attack dogs. But it lost to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is a hard one to argue. 3 home invaders enter a home and a fight ensues. A stunt woman has a can of dog food thrown at her face, causing her to fall flat. A pit bull attacks a stuntman and then is called off and sent to attack the woman who is still lying on the ground. The 2 men proceed to fight hand-to-hand, with the male intruder being finished off by having his head stomped on. The second woman then attacks the man, but he smashes her face around the room, including a telephone and a wall. A dummy was used for the hits to the mantle and the death blows. After the dog releases her, the first stunt woman runs through a glass door and ends up in a pool. She's then set on fire with a flamethrower. No CGI was used. Woo. That was quite a finale to that. So anyway, they lost Best Fight, and then Best Stunt Coordinator and or Second Unit Director. They'd won. Jonathan Eusebio, Darren Prescott, Scott Rogers, and Jeremy Vigo. They won that. So, and then at the Saturn Awards, we love the Saturn Awards. They were nominated 3 times for Best Action or Adventure Film, but lost to Mission Impossible Fallout. Best Actor Keanu Reeves, but lost to Robert Downey Jr. in Avengers Endgame. And Best Editing, but lost to Avengers Endgame.
I think it's a little bit sad that it didn't win anything, but man, Mission Impossible Fallout.
Yeah, I know that's a tough one. But, 18 wins overall, 29 other nominations. They still were recognized in the field of awards. Yeah, they did fine.
How about at the box office?
Well, the Wick team had another $40 million to make this outing. That's $47.2 million in today's dollars, so actually a decrease in budget when adjusted. Still, they managed to pull off a lot with what they had. This movie opened May 17th, 2019, opposite A Dog's Journey, The Sun Is Also a Star, and the limited release of The Souvenir. The movie debuted in the #1 spot, finally, and stayed in the top 10 for 6 weeks before going on to earn $171 million domestically and $157.3 million internationally, for a total gross of $387.5 million in today's dollars. That lands the film with a healthy adjusted profit per finished minute of almost $2.6 million, earning back more than 8 times its budget and setting the franchise on solid ground to continue.
I'm excited we're in this series because, in terms of movies that give me that exhilaration and that thrill, I think these so far were 3 for 3, even if this one is slightly less exhilarating than the last 2 for me. It's an amazing film.
It's definitely fun. I am amazed that this is the one that suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm in this. I really enjoyed the movie. So, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum, baby. There it is.
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, now in theaters, John Wick Chapter 4.
Saying goodbyes?
Saying hello.
You think your wife can hear you?
No.
Then why bother?
Maybe I'm wrong.
You're going to die.
Maybe not.
Goodbye to you, my trusted friend.
A new day is dawning. New ideas, new rules, new management.
We've known each other since we were 9 or 10.
Who is this?
The Marquis de Gramont. Challenge him to single combat. Win or lose, it's a way out.
I don't sit at the table.
Your family does.
Please pray for me. I was the black sheep of the family.
Man has to look his best when it's time to get married. Or buried.
I'm going to need a gun.
Goodbye, my friend. It's hard to die.
If you win, the table will honor its word. You will have your freedom.
It's hard to die.
Under the old laws, only one can survive. Failure to meet at sunrise
It's hard to die.
will result in execution.
Last words, Winston?
Just have fun out there.
I want you to find your peace. But a good death only comes after a good life. You and I left a good life behind a long time ago, my friend.
Letterboxd, Andrew, you know Letterboxd. It's our favorite social media for movie lovers, and we love it so much that we decided, hey, you know what? I don't want to see ads or stupid ads on my Letterboxd page. I want to be able to review my movies and put my watch list and diary up there ad-free. So I pay a little bit to get a pro or patron membership, and you could do that too if you want to get rid of your ads on your Letterboxd account. Just use the code NEXTREEL at checkout. There's a little box that says, do you have a code? Sure you do, because it's NEXTREEL. And you'll get 20% off your upgrade to Pro or Patron. It works for renewals as well. What are you going to do, Andy? Is this Parabellum? Is it a 5-star film for you, finally?
No. In fact, it's still a 4-star and a heart. But I still like it more than the other two. But they're all 4 stars and a heart so far. That's where I sit.
All right. I am not changing mine. It is also a 4-star and a heart. I feel like it was right the first time. It ain't broke. It ain't broke.
It ain't broke. That's right.
Yep.
Well, don't forget, visit thenextreel.com/letterbox to get your patron or pro membership. It works for renewals as well. So what did you think about John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd, give it, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Mine's a little bit long, but can I read it? Can I read it first because it's a little bit long? And it's from our dear friend of the show, Demi Adijuibe, who is our best friend, but doesn't know that.
Yet.
We love Demi. Yet.
Caveats. That's right.
Demi says, spent the first 20 minutes or so discussing whether or not the John Wick franchise could be considered a comedy. And while I feel like the dialogue leads too heavily into the drama action, so much of the physicality of these movies, especially 2 and 3, is clearly designed to be as funny as it is impressive. I mean, how do you not scream laugh at the knife fight or the sheer amount of glass shattering in the third act? I giggle every single time Keanu uses something new to smack away someone's hand right as they're firing a gun. It doesn't feel like it fits alongside any other movie you'd call a comedy or an action comedy, and maybe that's in part because it's been swallowed whole by the aesthetic of a My Chemical Romance video. But I'd just as soon put this movie on for a crowd-pleasing action-packed laugh as I would 21 Jump Street or something. Yes, it's too long. Yes, it's mostly people speaking in vague, suggestive dialogue like, not after what happened last time, and the table won't be too pleased about this. But man, they got assassins popping out of walls in plain sight. They got beautifully lit neon cityscape and an LED set piece that asks, what if the best part of Skyfall was like 30 minutes longer? They got some of the best, most deliberately framed choreographed action sequences I think I have ever seen in a movie. Motorcycle sword fight looks like the Wong Kar-wai film. They got the TikTok man. You know I love any movie with the TikTok man in it. 5 stars from Demi Adijuibe.
Wow. Well, I'm going to do 2 because you did that. That was so long.
Yeah, please.
First one by Patrick Willems, who says, in all caps, I can't believe Keanu, spoiler redacted, with a spoiler redacted, and that's only in the first 10 minutes.
I love it.
But my favorite one is Matt Singer's 4.5. We don't talk enough about how the killer dogs have adorable widow doggy bulletproof jackets.
It's really true.
It is true, but they are adorable.
That is so many of the action sequences of Keanu shooting close up were really so intentionally shooting people in the throat to get around the bulletproof armament, and that was horrible. I mean, in a good way. All right.
Right.
Thanks, Letterboxd. It is hard to believe we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you. and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material from all of our adapted film discussions. Purchasing through our links support the show at no extra cost to you.
In Season 12, the focus was big franchises and series. We covered both Paddington films, adapted from the beloved children's book character created by Michael Bond.
Oh, I love those films so much.
Hugh Grant is perfect.
For our Pitch Perfect series, the first film was adapted from Mickey Rapkin's nonfiction book about collegiate a cappella competitions.
It's like a short story of my life, literally. I lived college a cappella.
Sing it, brother.
I lived college a cappella.
I didn't mean literally.
You know who you're talking to, right? The Twilight Saga dominated the season with 5 films adapted from Stephenie Meyer's vampire romance novels, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and the 2 Breaking Dawn parts.
Dominated with awkward romance and nonsense logic is more like it.
That too.
Another Thin Man brought us back to Dashiell Hammett's only Thin Man sequel based on other Hammett material, The Farewell Murder, that wasn't just based on the characters from the first film.
We talked about Trainspotting and its sequel, T2 Trainspotting, adapted from Irvine Welsh's novels.
I hate the sequel's name.
I do too.
And the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy adapted from J.R.R. Tolkien's epic fantasy series.
Love these.
Extended editions all the way, baby.
Plus, all the Mission Impossible films based on the 1960s TV series.
And we've still got at least one more to go.
Members got to hear us chat about The Hustler and The Color of Money, adapted from Walter Tevis's books.
Get all of these books and more at our originals page, thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals.